Hello, welcome back to How About That Crypto. I am your host, Bitcoin Stylist on Twitter and Bitcoin Hairstylist on Instagram. I am here with my guest, Julia Moroles, and we are going to talk about crypto and Web3 during her haircut. So first, I'm going to get her shampooed and we'll be right back. So talk to me.
So, I'm not an expert, but based on my research, there's a lot of concerns with the environmental impact of cryptocurrency. And I think that that's something that's valid to consider because humans by default, we are not good with how we consider what the future would hold when we come up with a new idea, right? So my concern is, in regards to, I also work in tech. I'm an environmentalist who works in tech. So my concern is if we are going to have these large scale server farms, by default, naturally, certain things are going to fail and need to be replaced regarding say that there's a certain piece that needs to be e-wasted and we need to get rid of that piece. What do you think is going to be the outcome of the large scales of e-waste that we will be having in the future from these server farms? Because just to maintain these things, there's going to be a lot of e-waste that comes from that. And currently, our approach with e-waste is actually not sustainable for the environment. So that's one of my main concerns.
Yeah, so the e-waste, that is, so when it comes to the environment, it's the energy consumption.
Right.
Some people just have a blatant outright they just blatantly just outright don't like the fact that it's high energy consumption. Try not to lean your head over to the left.
Right.
And so those people, there's not much we can do about like convincing them that of anything, and there's not really, it's like either it consumes energy or it doesn't. So that's not what we're talking about. However, just to touch on that for just a quick second before I go into your question for anybody watching or listening. Okay, and just straight ahead, don't look down.
Okay.
So Bitcoin there's the consensus protocols so how the network of how the money is moved around is secured by a consensus protocol, and different blockchains have different consensus protocols. And the proof of work consensus protocol is really the one in question, because that's the one that requires mining. The others require a group of people putting together a bunch of their money into one pool and doing validation through it's called a proof of stake. Right. So people stake their coins, and the consensus protocol, it doesn't really require much energy, and it doesn't require mining machines. So most of them are transferring over or being built that way. But at the same time, while that might help make it seem like it's better than or progress, it's not really progress, because Bitcoin will never change. In order for Bitcoin's consensus protocol to change, it requires 91% of all miners on the network to agree to change the consensus protocol. Basically, it'll never happen. Okay, so at the end of the day, this environmental concern is always going to be an issue as long as Bitcoin's around.
That makes sense.
So then to go into, Ethereum is also, but Ethereum's transitioning to proof of stake. There's no guarantee it'll actually work. They might have to stay proof of work. However, if they stay proof of work, most likely all the people who use that network would probably move into something else because it's slow. But that's not necessarily accurate either. So anyway, so proof of work, we're talking about proof of work that requires high computational power and requires these high processing these machines that are the ones that are processing all the data.
Right.
And that's Ethereum and Bitcoin. So the e-waste and then it'll be the other thing would be what type of energy are they consuming? If you're okay with them consuming energy as long as it's renewable, right?
Right.
Okay, so so now to your question about the e-waste. E-waste is something that's being brought up. The companies that are creating these machines and these chips to process them, they are working on making them more energy efficient.
Mhm.
One AMD I think it was AMD. There's AMD and Nvidia are the two top ones that are creating it. I think VMware is also potentially working on some software that doesn't require as much energy. But point is, the companies that create these are trying to get the energy consumption less, make them more energy efficient.
Hmm.
So that's one thing that's happening. The other thing is that recycling of e-waste is, I can't remember what the number was. I think it was like 17%, something super low.
Yeah.
I don't, maybe not that low, but it was very low. Like we don't, like as a generally, not crypto, just in general. And I think that's globally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So global recycling of e-waste, we could really work on building that up. I mean, on being better at that. I think that's definitely something, and maybe a way to keep Bitcoin and proof of work around would be to say, like, if you wanted to go the regulation route, which it looks like it's going to have to be regulated some way to prevent what the bad side of the environment, like the negative environmental impact, would probably have to be policed through regulation. It doesn't
Mhm.
look like as an industry, like they're pushing in that direction, but they're going to chase the cheapest costs no
Right.
matter what. And if there's not some sort of rule put around it, well, so you could put, in theory, I guess you could put a rule saying they have to recycle a certain percentage. So this could be a regulatory discussion.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, like we as a planet are terrible at recycling e-waste. What are you doing about your e-waste? Versus saying this industry has e-waste. It's like,
Right.
well, does it? Are they fixing the machines? A lot of these companies are fixing the machines as they break down. If they burn out, I don't know that they can be fixed. But so there's a lot of people that are tinkering or selling them on a secondary market where people will tinker with them. So I imagine that would be some way to handle that.
Hmm.
And then there was something else. Yeah, I think those are the two main things. Is like the companies that create these machines. Three things: the companies that create these machines are working to make them more energy efficient,
Mhm.
so that and that they last longer. And then there could also be another. I imagine, because as Americans and capitalists, we are really good at identifying problems, especially when the government says, "Hey, this is a problem. You have to do something about it. Here are the rules." Well, an entire industry could pop up where they're recycling and fixing and refurbishing, or taking those machines and finding other purposes for them, or maybe scrapping the parts, breaking them down, and rebuilding them. So I do think that without the guardrails up, it
Yeah.
would take some time. The industry would have to continue to expand, and then I do think you'll see startups come online saying, "Hey, we can recycle these," but the companies might not have an incentive to sign up for this program unless there's some sort of government regulation saying that they have to recycle. Like, for example, when the markets collapsed in 2008, I think it was 2008,
Mhm.
their part of the regulation was that banks had to now, no one quote me on this, but I know that there was a regulation, whether it was a result of the financial collapse in 2008, which I'm pretty sure it was, or not. But there's a law that said that banks and financial institutions had to spend a certain amount of money in financial education,
Oh.
and in entire businesses, in multi-$100 million businesses have sprung up to create this education. And then, since these banks and these financial institutions have to spend money, they have to spend a certain percentage of their profits or their revenue or something like that to on this stuff. So you could create these businesses will pop up. So I think
Hmm.
that is 100%, but it didn't happen until there was the rules around it.
Right.
And yeah, so that's kind of how I understand the e-waste thing. Like, it is a problem, and I don't know that anybody will do anything about it. Like in the hair industry, like, we are a very dirty industry that no one talks about. We have tons of waste, all the foils that put in our hair, all that hair, like that could be used. that could be used to like soak up oil. Like hair
True.
absorbs like an insane amount compared to its body weight.
Yeah.
So there's a company that you have to pay. The salon has to pay to use it. It's called Green Circle Salons, and they'll come in, they'll pick up your stuff, and they'll use the hair for cleaning up oil spills.
Wow.
And they clean and recycle the foil. And depending on the jurisdiction, they're allowed to collect things and not allowed to collect things because the states have their different rules around waste collection.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway,
That's awesome.
yeah, that's my kind of idea about the e-waste thing. It's a problem, and I do think that you will need legislation
Yeah.
and regulation around it, um, but it can be dealt with.
Okay.
And there's a lot. There, all these types of things. These things I'm talking about are not like my ideas. These are things that are being talked about in the industry. It's just no one's really. Very few people are taking the initiative because they have to compete. So they have to
Yeah.
compete with people who don't care about the environment. So really, you need to put those guardrails on them. That's my theory. So no one hate me about that because I said that, but that's just me keeping it real.
No, that's definitely true. And I think like oftentimes it's an afterthought rather than something that you put in the forefront from the beginning. Like most people are like, oh, maybe we should be carbon neutral after the fact, after
Yeah.
they've made all this damage. And it's a real problem because we need to be talking about the environmental impact from the beginning. And that probably would have saved a lot of our issues if we had done that with so many industries that have been extremely wasteful. But that brings me to my next question in regards to the solar farms.
Okay.
You mentioned that China is doing a better job with how they're, dealing with the energy and combating the energy aspect of that, or the server farms. But I don't think America is. I don't think the server farms that are being built here are going to follow that same approach. So, and we also don't really have the same amount of land because China's so large and vast that they can do that. They can build as many solar, server farms as much as they want. But here, I don't think that we have that opportunity. So what are your thoughts? And what have you done in regards to research with that in America?
Well, one, I would like to address China has uh, banned all crypto. They said it was because of energy concerns, but like I said, only Bitcoin and Ethereum are high energy intensive, not the entire industry.
Mm,
So that's kind of a bunch of BS. Like they just want control over the money, and because it's surveillance money, the whole CBDC thing, central bank digital currency, that's really just a way to spy on your citizens. I mean, you could
yeah.
literally shut your money off in your wallet if they wanted to.
Mm,
And they could decide, you know what, grain is too expensive right now, so everyone has to switch over to an alternative. Or everyone will be limited. So your wallet will not allow you to spend more than a certain amount. They could essentially ration the whole country,
uh,
which in a way is kind of brilliant, unless you're an individual that likes being an individual,
yeah.
which I do, as an American,
Me too.
that's what we're built on. So anyway, and then another point that you said about China being better about certain things, based on my research, they have some of I'm pretty sure they're spending more money than any nation on building up their renewable energy sources. Now
Yeah.
that's completely separate from the crypto stuff. So anyway, uh, as far as renewable energy, there's some really awesome, really exciting things about this. So I'm glad you brought that up. And this is one project, okay? And probably gonna conclude with the same thing I did for the previous question, but nonetheless. So there are these there's a company that is building out solar farms, and they're tokenizing each solar panel. So each solar panel will correspond with a token,
Huh.
or 10 tokens per solar panel, whatever, depending on the solar panel and the economics, however it works. Well, let's just say one token per solar panel. So by owning the token, you will reap the benefits. You'll be essentially owning a solar panel. So you'll reap the benefits, any of the profits that are pulled in for selling that energy. So it's a way to like basically get people to fund the rise of our green energy industry,
Yeah.
renewable energy
Yeah.
industry. Now, there's also something really interesting is renewable energy has two main issues. Renewable energy takes some time to kind of get up and running. You have to build up the wind slings, you have to build the solar panels, you have to clear the land, and you have to put them up, and it costs money. So unless you go in with all the money to build it all at once, most of these projects, from how I understand, and any viewers or listeners that want to debate this, totally let me know, because I'm down to be corrected. Just make sure you leave some links. Don't just say I'm wrong, because that doesn't work for me. But so anyway, so they need one of the biggest problems, especially in America with renewable energy, is the fact that we don't have transmission lines. A lot of this energy in the desert and the Great Plains, there's not where the majority of the people live, which is mostly on the coasts and major cities. So they have to get the energy from those places. We don't have that infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the utility companies won't build it unless the energy is there. And the energy companies won't build the energy until the utility lines, because they want to be able to sell it.
Right.
So all you need is a low bandwidth internet connection for Bitcoin mining. You could put Bitcoin mining rigs inside of like a facility, and they'll start pulling the energy, and it's called a base load consumer. So once you get this base load consumer, then you can effectively bootstrap entire green energy sector with Bitcoin mining. Literally, Bitcoin mining could be, don't judge me on this, but it could totally be the solution to the fact that to our renewable energy sector.
Wow.
In theory.
Wow.
Now, is this happening yet? I think that this is mostly theoretical. I think that in certain cases it's kind of happening, like in Texas. They're creating a more stable grid, which if there's a stable grid, more companies will build more energy onto the grid. But if the grid, the energy, the way I understand it is when you pull in energy off the grid, then people are selling the energy. But when people aren't consuming the energy, then like certain times during the day or certain times during the night, the energy consumption might go down.
Yes.
And then then you don't need the energy. But like if Bitcoin rigs are constantly running, then you have a constant need on energy. And at peak hours, the Bitcoin mining in Texas has a deal. They have to shut their mining rigs off or reduce the capacity. So or reduce the energy consumption. So effectively, you could expand the energy or the energy production by having somebody who's constantly in need of that energy. So you can actually create a more stable grid by utilizing somebody who's constantly pulling this type of energy off the grid.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So like the cool thing is, like, I don't know, it kind of goes back to my other point. I don't know that the industry will do it without rules around carbon, like being carbon capped or something like that. My underwear crooked. I'm sorry. I was like, keep moving your head, and it's like, there we go, perfect. I believe it could happen without government stepping in, but I don't know. Like people still, companies look for the cheapest price because they have to compete with other companies who are doing the same thing.
That's true.
And as long as you have companies competing for the cheapest cost of energy to mine these things, then you're not, I don't know that you'll see it happen.
Yeah.
Unless who knows, like as prices skyrocket for oil and gas because of this Ukraine conflict.
Right.
And maybe you could see more and more people saying, well, hey, let's team up with a solar company or a wind company, and let's build some more, get some more capacity online, because this energy is so expensive. However, that takes so much time. Who knows if those investments would actually be made? Because I don't know if anybody expects this war and conflict to go on for that long. So
Yeah.
So I do really think that you're really, when it comes to like government regulation and like what can the government do, I don't think that banning it is a way. I think that you can say, like, what are the benefits? Like, how can society benefit from this? And I do think that, if America wants to become a green energy producer and relying on renewable energy, then you're going to need something like Bitcoin mining, or you need a bill in Congress to get along, something like when they built all the highway system. And
yeah,
but like Obama tried to do that, and it kind of got thrown in his face with the Solyndra whole thing with Solyndra, like the whole scam. They did it through loans, and I don't know. it sounds like it's pretty complex, but all you need is the market to do what the market does with Bitcoin mining. And considering the benefits of Bitcoin in general, when it comes to like store of value, there seems to be a lot of people interested in being part of this industry. So I do think that that's really the solution to a lot of our energy problems. You know, call me naive or call me say I, you know, what is it called? Drank the Kool-Aid, you know, a little bit maybe, but yeah, that's what I've been reading.
Well, that's true. I mean, a lot of people think that technology is going to catch up to the issues with climate change and will solve it via technology. But, you know, my thing is like, again, e-waste and the massive amounts of things that we're doing currently that are causing more problems rather than helping. I think that we need to find a solution, and possibly Bitcoin is the solution. But I also don't know enough about everything that's going on that could bring us to that solution.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know.
but that brings me. It's a little not quite on the environmental aspect of things, but my other question would be technology literacy. There are a lot of people that don't even know how to turn on a computer. So how do we expect, grandma and grandpa or mom and pop stores to use cryptocurrency on that level? I will say, however, I've been seeing, like, I tried to order a piece of pizza the other day and I saw that there was an option to buy it with Bitcoin.
No,
Yeah,
where
down the
did you?
street. Pizza movers down the street.
What?
Yeah, they give you that option. And I was like, wow, that's pretty
I
cool.
love that.
I love that. I've never seen that before. And it's like, that's not like a big chain or anything, like it's kind of a smaller chain. So I thought that was really interesting. So I know that people are starting to transition, but at the same time, like, we do need to have computer literacy, and we do need to have people understand technology to some certain level in order to comprehend Bitcoin, to not be afraid of it, but also to be able to use it as well. So I'm wondering about your thoughts on that.
So I think I kind of really appreciate this because I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about it. I think the assumption is, you know, aside from leaving behind older people who
Yeah.
don't adopt to technology, because that is definitely a thing. But outside of that group of people, I don't really think about it. I think the assumption is generally young people are connected to their phones and they're so consumed with the screens that it's intuitive to them. And I think that's true for the most part. But I guess if you don't have access to it, yeah, I think that that's an interesting thought. I would have to like really think about it. Like, what do you know about financial? What about technical literacy?
Well, I know that there are some organizations out there. There's even one in DC, and I'm blanking on the name right now, but they are trying to bring more technology and technical literacy to poorer communities. And what they do is they find technology that can be donated to the certain communities, and then they have experts work or volunteer in that space and teach large amounts of people how to use computers, etc. But the way I think that they would be able to expand on technology literacy would be similar to the way that Evo Morales won his presidential election. He So 60% of Bolivia is indigenous, and
Okay.
he saw that there were a lot of people that didn't know how to read or write. So he literally went to smaller communities and taught massive amounts of indigenous women how to read and write in English. And then, didn't tell them necessarily to vote for him, but they told them, you can vote, you can have power and speak for yourself if you are able to read and write. And so a large amount of these women voted him into power and result of that, because he's the man that got them to be able to read and write and be able to, that literally changed their lives for the better. So I thought that was a really interesting way for him to win the election. But I think that that would be an approach that we would have to, you know, look into in regards to technical literacy as well, because
Yeah.
we would have to teach people on a large scale, but also we'd have to do it in a way where it's almost voluntary for tech people to teach people that. you know?
I think, I have like a few thoughts from based on how you're talking about it. Like, so, uh, what am I trying to say? So there's financial literacy, but there's also, this might not necessarily be in the same line of questioning, but it just kind of jumped in my head from this conversation. And I think it kind of leads to what you're talking about a little bit, or it's related, is f- technical literacy, but also financial literacy.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You have the like I got into an Uber, and the Uber driver also happened to be like a financial planner, and he was telling me, I guess he's like driving this, he's driving like a pretty dope Benz around, but I think he's just like trying to pick up business.
Yeah.
And he's telling me that like Bitcoin and crypto is not for normal people. It's only okay for like rich people, which like one, I have a fundamental disagreement. I have a fundamental issue with that,
Yeah.
but that's besides the point. The point is, he was, his point was that people don't know what they're doing, and they get into it like they get into the lottery, like they're trying to get rich quick.
Mm.
So like, so to you be able to use crypto and be able to like be financially able to utilize crypto, you really only know how to use like a cell phone, basically, like, and like use apps, like for the use of purchases or for the use of transactions, like you could just download Coinbase, and it's super simple. You can just buy some coin, and then you can. Coinbase has a lot of education. Actually, okay, here you go. There's a lot of education on Coinbase's website, tons. They even give you free crypto,
Mm.
uh, by taking these quizzes. You have to watch these videos and take these quizzes so you understand the uses of them. So you're learning about like how the technology is being applied, and I guess you could say like that's not mandatory. That's something they just do. It's kind of like the thing I was talking about with the banks. The banks, you got all these people taking out all these loans that the banks are more than the predatory practices, and even maybe non-predatory practices, not to cast any blame, but like people are getting these loan products that they didn't understand,
Yeah,
and it toppled the entire freaking global economy.
exactly.
And so there is a good argument, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but I do think it's a pretty valid argument to say that like these institutions who profit off of this stuff have a responsibility,
Yeah.
that takes away from the personal responsibility. So please, nobody say that I'm saying that you don't have to have personal responsibility. I do think you do, but to a certain extent, I think it would be it's an interesting thought, to say like these companies have to be part of like helping people understand like how to use the technology, just like the banks. Like the banks don't let you take out a loan your first time if you want a first time home buyer program, and you want to get like one of these FHA, whatever they are, loans. Then you have to take like a little course.
Right.
Yeah, my wife had to take a course in order to get this, like be part of this program.
Mhm.
And so I guess like that makes sense. I also think that maybe that's like just a public something that is like a nonprofit could do that,
Yeah.
maybe. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's something that I haven't really, isn't really talked about much, in the space. But I think it's an interesting point, and it's a good thought to have.
I think about that all the time just because in my day job, I help professors with technology, and they're brilliant people, but they cannot record a Zoom meeting, like they can't
Right.
set up a set of lights, like they have the most minimal amount of understanding of technology. And I see those people, if we had an economy, say that the United States completely switched to cryptocurrency,
Hmm.
those people will be completely lost. Like they have
Yes.
no idea how, like just the other day, my mom, she's a boomer. Just the other day, my mom somehow turned her Amazon app into only Spanish, and now she can't get it back. So it's like, things like that make me think about like technology literacy, and I think you're right to expand it on financial literacy. I was very fortunate to go to a Montessori school, and they're very hands-on. So I learned financial literacy at the age of 12,
Oh,
like
that's cool.
they taught us how to write a check, like, and
Right.
all these other things. They even taught us how a proper apartment should be laid out, like things like that. Like,
Right.
and we used to have a lot more of that with like home economics and things like that, but now we don't. And we're seeing the results of not having those types of classes readily available to the public. Like a lot of people don't even cook anymore, which is a whole other, point. But like I think we are becoming so reliant on outward things rather than becoming self-reliant, and I think that would be a real problem if we did switch to complete, cryptocurrency in the United States, because we always think like, oh, there's everybody's relatively smart, everybody knows this and this, but like in result of the last presidency, in my opinion, we've learned that there have been a lot of people that don't quite understand politics or don't understand how things operate on a day-to-day level. So I really think that there needs to be a lot of education for people to get on board, or to even grasp what is cryptocurrency, what is Bitcoin, what are NFTs, like all of that.
I think it'd be a really brilliant idea for a crypto company or a crypto exchange to onboard customers through education. It would be a positive for the bottom line,
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
matter of fact, I think. So, and I love how you just the bridge like educating people with personal responsibility. Like, because I loved it. Like, you basically just said like you could have personal responsibility if you have access to the education, and
Mhm.
whether or not whose responsibility is to provide the education is a separate conversation. But just having that readily available, whether that's like a public service or if it's like it just makes sense that a crypto company would be smart to like go in and provide that type of education,
Yeah.
and they would build such loyal customers.
Yeah.
It's just so that would be super brilliant. As a matter of fact, if any crypto companies are listening, we just gave you a brilliant idea. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like, it's so new, even though you said it was the 13th anniversary now.
13th anniversary in January. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's still new. Like
Very.
only 13 is very young for this type of financial, like, for something to be so impactful
Right.
and so brand new. I feel like we do need to learn a lot more about it, and we do need to expand on a lot more things, even including the environment and education. Those are my two concerns.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Well, we're going to blow dry and style this, and we'll be back for a conclusion. So, anyway, um, so yeah, I thought you had some great questions and some thoughts and some things for me to think about. You got any other thoughts or ideas that what are your thoughts based on what you know about the e-waste stuff? Like, because I feel like it sounded like you definitely did some research and
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I work at a carbon neutral school, a university, and based on what I've seen from their approach to e-waste, they oftentimes they like when we decommission computers every 4 years, right?
okay.
And we have a lot of computers because of computer labs. There's a lot of need for a lot of computers, and if you don't have any updated computers, you need to change them over within 4 years to get proper education
Mhm.
for the software. So when we decommission computers, we donate them. We have an outsource that takes our older computers, and they use them for their educational programs. And then if they are, beyond the ability of use, then we e-waste them. And where they go is the question. A lot of the time when e-waste is, you know, taken out, it is sent to poorer countries, third world countries usually, or quote unquote third world.
Mhm.
And oftentimes they have children taking the batteries out of these old computers and stuff. So they get exposed to a lot of
Huh.
waste on their own. I recently discovered this, and that's why, it's at the tip of my mind. But I think like if we approach things in a way where we aren't creating excess garbage on the earth, we'd really have to figure out a way to recycle these things, so that we don't just have a bunch of excess stuff. In
Yeah.
addition to that, people are like, well, why don't we just send garbage to space? Because there's already a lot of garbage in space.
Yeah, I apparently there's a lot, like so much that it's becoming an international debate with like just recently China had to divert a satellite because some space junk was flying at it and it was just taken out their satellite or whatever.
Yeah,
And then also I just saw there's a new crater on the moon because the space junk collided into the moon.
oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's crazy to think about, like
it is kind of crazy actually.
there's so much waste in space
Yeah.
that we have no idea what to do with, like, and we can't just burn trash because that also causes issues. So we have this colossal problem of all this waste and we have no solutions, So it's going to take a lot more people with money to try and change this problem because little people, like myself, who isn't a billionaire,
Right.
I can't do much. All I can do is my own personal, approach to being as carbon neutral and as, clean for the environment as possible. But like, we have this huge issue and I don't see it going away anytime soon, not in my lifetime at least. So e-waste, there are ways that we can combat it on a smaller scale or even like in a scale of education, just giving more people computers that are usable but not necessarily appreciated by universities or anything like that. But it really takes a lot of regulation, a lot of thought, and I think that we're just not there yet. So I
Well,
don't have a
I will
solution.
say that in the crypto world, there's definitely the uh, the two big chip create manufacturers are AMD and Nvidia. There does seem to be a bit of a competition between them.
Mm.
So some healthy competition could also help. It'd be interesting to kind of see how that goes. Like, does is if there is a lot of anticipation from the crypto industry to self-regulate to be carbon neutral. There's something called the Crypto Climate Accord, which is modeled after the Paris Climate Accord,
Oh wow.
and so there's a bunch of miners and crypto companies that have signed up. It's more like a self-regulatory thing, and so stuff. There are efforts being made, but like I said, and earlier on, and it's like um, the question remains like, is this like something that's just happening now because we're trying to get friendly regulation, and then after that, that's going to be like a free for all, or not? Is government going to have to make a decision to like step in and say, hey, like this stuff, this waste is not okay? There are a lot of environmentalist groups that have lobbied Congress, and they did have a environmental impact of proof of work mining or something like that thing where a bunch of environmentalists and congressional members got together and they had a hearing,
Hmm.
and or they're going to have a hearing anyway. There's like it's like public record that this is something that is being discussed in the legislative space. So I expect to see something like right now in New York, a bunch of there's like 40 out of 100, something like that, people that have signed to agree to make proof of work mining illegal in the
Hmm.
state of New York, and until they can do more research to decide if it's how safe it is and what the impacts are. So there are efforts in local area governments areas to do something about it. They're taking a pretty hardline stance on it. And other places like Texas are saying, we're just more interested in becoming energy independent.
Right.
So we want you to help us build out our energy grid. And but you have to agree to these terms. So like the good news is there are terms that can be agreed to, and there are ways to keep this stuff up and running.
Hmm.
The bad news is that without something, the states could do it, but if you're talking about the environment, you really need it at a higher level than the states, and
Yeah.
so we'll see like how that rolls.
Well, that gives me hope.
But we do need to keep having these conversations, and the more of these conversations we have, the more likely we're going to come up with some really cool ideas, and more likely when Congress gets together to talk about this stuff, they'll have more ideas to think about. So it's really cool. And I feel like we're being part of it right now with this conversation and being part of like the solution, but also not a solution that means an outright ban, which could be bad for other reasons.
Yeah.
So I think it's important. So cool. Well, there you go. So, all right. Well, thank you for being my guest on the show, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And please let me know what you think. Let us know what you think. Leave a comment below. Please like and subscribe. If you're listening on podcast, please follow, click the 5 stars. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and click the bell. It helps support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. All right. See you later.